This is a wonderful weekend, a wonderful year, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the life of this great saint who is our Guru. There are two aspects to his life. The one is the outer, and that's what we see. That is something that is lost forever, as far as almost everybody here is concerned, except in the form of stories. But that song that we sang at the end is the one that is true forever, and that was true even then. I remember him telling me once how he felt when he was going to reincarnate in a new body, and he could feel the personality that he was supposed to assume for that incarnation. And he said it felt a little like putting on a hot overcoat on a hot day, sort of itchy. And then he said, you put it on, you get used to it, it's all right. But he wasn't that. He wasn't his personality, he wasn't his outward acts, and yet each one of them was a little window that helped you to understand the infinity from which he came. And in that last chant that we sang, it says, Guru is Brahma, Guru is God, which is, it would be truer to say Brahma is the Guru, and Brahma uses the Guru to bring you back to himself. The purpose of the Guru is not to have you thinking what a wonderful man he was, but to understand from what you can gain from him what you can become. I remember one time back in the days when people weren't wearing beards, and he had me grow a beard. And the Masonic Lodge in Long Beach wanted me to be in a tableau showing Jesus Christ at Gethsemane. So Master asked me afterwards, he said they liked it very much, and I said, you really looked Christ-like. And I said, well, I would much rather be Christ-like than look Christ-like. And he said, perfectly matter-of-factly, that will come. He saw each one of us in our divine potential. He never saw us just as a person of human faults. And in the same way, he always reached out to people where they were. We had a dinner with our guests just a few minutes ago, and I was recalling how he would be different with each person, and somehow each person would think he defined Master by how he was with that person, but he would be completely different with another person. And I saw him in this wide variety of manners of being, and I realized that it was because he was reaching out to people where they were so that he could draw them into the deeper reality that he wanted them to grow into. So it was in coming to this country, the beautiful places that he built, this beautiful place of Ananda that he's built through us. These are something that he wouldn't have bothered to do in India, but he knew that Americans would understand if he talked of beauty, if you could show them beauty. would understand peace if you could show it to them. They would understand these deeper teachings not in just a little room on the outskirts of a city in a tiny house, but if you showed it to them in action. And also in his behavior, he was so outward going, and yet I remember sometimes when he would scold me, and I'd look into his eyes and I'd feel so badly for him that he had to scold me, because I saw that he wasn't touched by any emotion. He was only thinking how he could help me, what he could do for me. This great master is as much alive today as he was when he had his physical body. Reading stories about him, hearing stories about him, this is wonderful because it shows us a divine life, divinely lived. But it should also help us to see what we can aspire to in ourselves. And the most important thing to understand is that Master is that aspect of his consciousness that is not a human consciousness. His consciousness was infinite. He was keeping this little body together, but his mind was not here. I remember out at the desert after he had finished writing his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, and he was walking with me around the compound at 29 Palms, and he was walking very slowly, and sometimes he'd sway like this, and I'd have to sort of catch him so he wouldn't fall. And he said, "It's so difficult. I'm in every body. It's so difficult to keep just this one body going." But he was in that cosmic state where he could come down the ladder, up the ladder. He could come down into this world and act and laugh and joke. And yet behind everything there was a purpose. And often that purpose was one he never explained. He let you meditate on it. I used to, as I've grown over the years, slightly at least, looking back I've thought, what a poor disciple I was. There was so much I didn't understand that over the years, meditating on the episodes with him, meditating on the things that he had told me and things he had done, gradually it began to come clear what he was trying to say to me. And I wish I could be with him now. But then I realize even now what a poor disciple I would be, because there's so much more to learn. The only really completely perfect disciple he had was Rajarshi. In reading, I should say, I haven't finished the book of Durga Matas, the one thing that amazed me about Rajarshi was his ability to take a simple word from Master and turn it like that and go with it forever. It didn't take him years of trying, well, I'm working on it, Master. Well, I'm trying. Well, with your grace, I hope I can overcome it. Master told him, for instance, don't be so critical. He never criticized again. That's incredible. That kind of power, of willpower, of strength, is something you very rarely find. He was so sweet and loving and calm, but he was also so strong. He can be a wonderful example for us in those ways. And all of the close disciples, in one way or another, have captured an essence, an aspect of Master. And so also these guests that we have with us, each one has had his own particular experience of Master and can explain Master in a particular way. It's like a diamond. You turn it in different directions and you see different colors coming from it because of the different facets and the prismatic effect. And so each disciple captures one or another, or sometimes several qualities of the Master. But it's very important to have that kind of contact. It's important because through that, I mean, if a Master can touch a stone and bless it, and you feel that you've got a wonderful opportunity to hold that stone in your hand, how much greater is a life changed that Master touched. And so this power that he brought into the world to change the West is something that will continue through those who knew him, through those who knew us, through those who know you. Gradually it would expand out over many, many generations to touch the world. it has to be so because there's that kind of power in it. And as I look at Master's life, I see that it was absolutely perfectly designed to do a divine work in the West and in America. He wasn't an American. He was totally Indian. He would have loved to just stay in India and live in a simple ashram. When he showed his deeper nature, human nature, it was always Indian. And yet he knew how to relate to Americans in order to show this central truth in its countless different manifestations, so that he was not telling people, leave the world, enter an ashram, renounce everything, just meditate. People, as they look back on him, or as people try to talk about him and sort of make him seem to be somebody who is so completely untouched by anything, it's something of an eye-opener also to read Durga's book and see how he was determined to, he was so creative. I remember when he invented mushroom burgers and the enthusiasm he had, and the different businesses that he started in order to help support. He had to do that in this country. We haven't even had a Rajarshi to help us here. But we've continued in that same spirit, that we've started the businesses that would make it work. We've done the different things that would make it happen, but it's all been for God, and that's what he taught us. He taught us how to live in this world for God, not for yourself. Do it in order to serve him, not yourself. And in this spirit, I have seen that, for instance, it's a wonderful thing in our community that many times the people who run the businesses earn less than the people working in them. Because nobody's here for money. If they have a larger family, they get more money, because they need more for their children. But it's not ever with the thought of gain. It's with the thought of serving people, and above all, serving Master. Well, Master absorbed into his personality those aspects of America, particularly, which he most admired. The enthusiasm, that do it now rather than waiting until tomorrow. The creative, I remember once, those of you who don't know Kriya, he taught us to use a little olive oil on the tongue, and to feel the coolness in the throat as we're supposed to. I thought, well, why not put a little peppermint oil? That will make the olive oil taste cool. And so somebody took this to Master and told him, and Master said, oh, you Americans, you're always trying to improve on things. Well, he was that way too. He was always trying to find new ways. And he, before they used stick shifts the way they're on the steering wheel, they used them on the floor. And he was the first one who originated the idea of making the stick shift on the steering wheel. We might think, well, what would a master bother with things like that for? But it was a manifestation of his creativity, which was also a manifestation of his attunement to this American consciousness, which he saw as the country of the future. He said, someday India and America will unite and lead mankind on the path of Dharma and on the path of right dharmic action in the world. And so, in his personality, what we see, essentially, is this deep, great spiritual master who, living in the West, manifested those qualities that would help Westerners to develop the best qualities in themselves, and always with the integrity of honesty, fairness, service, truthfulness. Those were his ideals. But then to draw them from that and from attachment to that back into their inner self. He never was interested in converting people as such. He wanted them to be converted to their own higher self. And certainly he could do more for people who came to him than for those who just took his teachings and went back to their own churches, but he wanted people to have that freedom of will to do what they felt called to do. He did not come to start an organization. He came to launch a teaching. That is an interesting point. When he was working to get SRF, Self-Realization Fellowship, really founded, and he was anxious that Rajarshi give them $1 million that could be invested, that would give them financial security. At that time, he was also working on copyrights in Mexico, and he took the copyrights out not in his name, but not in SRF's name, but in his name, knowing that he would be leaving his body in just a few months. This with Mexico was just 6 months before he passed away, and he'd been talking to us for, I think, about a couple of years that he was leaving his body soon, that his life work was just about finished. And yet, he didn't want it owned by an organization. And looking back, it seems it was deliberate, because his mind was on leaving the body, trying to get everything set so that it would carry on as it should, and yet he wanted the teaching to be universal, not to be owned. He came to launch a teaching. He gave the tremendous blessing of an organization that could help spread that teaching. But ultimately, it's a whole new spirit that he was bringing into the world, a whole new consciousness, a new way of looking at life. And we see some of the effect of that already, only 40 years after his passing. But this effect will become very pronounced over the centuries to come, because it was a divine work. It came with divine power. It was the response of God to the needs of this particular age. When a person attains final liberation, you can't say that one is greater than another. This is the mistake disciples make. In order to demonstrate their loyalty to their guru, they try to make him out to be greater than any other. That isn't true loyalty, because then they show their guru to be relatively great. When you reach absoluteness, there cannot be relative greatness. To be really true and faithful to Jesus, you cannot limit him to somebody who lived in Israel 2,000 years ago. To be really true to Master, you can't say he's the greatest master who ever lived, or greater than other masters, or any of that nonsense. Because when you're one with God, you are God. Nothing can be greater than that. And so, what Master said is to discuss the greatness of a master has to be done in worldly terms, in terms of the life that they did, the work that they did. In that way you can judge. His work, his life work, we're still so close to it that we can't see the drama of it in all its... You can really see a painting when you step back a little bit, and you can see it in proportion. When, maybe 100 years from now, people look back, then they'll begin to see more clearly what a great thing he did. In an outward way, we have to say is one of the greatest things that have ever been brought to this world. But I have spent the last 45 years meditating on his life, meditating on his words, meditating on his actions, meditating on what they mean to me, to others, and also what they mean to people everywhere. And the more I do so, far though I am from really understanding much, I have to say that I'm absolutely amazed. This is a power that is so universal, it eats into every aspect of life. And to celebrate his 100th anniversary, you might say this is just the beginning of the kind of celebrations that will go on for many centuries to come.